Hi everyone, Stepan here. Another training game, game 88. Let's try to start winning some games. Okay, d6. E4 or c4? Let's go e4. Let's go for a normal Pirts. Okay, this line. I don't want to trade queens. So knight f3. I'm gonna try to win every game. This is gonna be a Philidor now, most likely. Okay, not a Philidor, so we can go c4, going into the normal old Indian lines, and I kind of like that, so let's go c4. I don't mind ed and the knight having c5 and e5, because I will then have f4 or b4 to chase the knight away. So let's just continue normal development and keep our position flexible. Now my opponent wants bishop e7, queen c7, and develop, so bishop e2, followed by castles. Seems fine. Now, as soon as they castle, I should go d5. As soon as they castle, I should go d5. That's the normal strategy. Although, I've had some success with h3 and bishop e3. So I will try that. I mean, d5 is the theory here. It's the main move. So let's go h3. h3 is also fine. I just want to develop, and the point behind waiting for my opponent to take on d4, recapturing with the knight, is that I have knight f5. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. Whether I play d5 or if my opponent takes on d4, I still give away the c5 square. In my last tournament game where I had this setup played against me, my opponent actually played rook e8 in this position, after which d5 became much stronger. Okay, so now bishop e3 is nice, and there are also lines with d5, and if knight c5, I can take on e5 and play d6 if my pieces are doubled up. Although on knight c5, the pawn on e4 will be weak. So with d5, knight c5, queen c2 defending the pawn on e4, d5, knight c5, queen c2, let's say rook d8, bishop e3. Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go d5. I don't think I can wait any longer. Queen c2. a4, very committal. a5, excuse me. So my opponent is going for a standard King's Indian plan of a4 and prevents b4. So I'll have to prepare b4 with b3, a3, so that I don't allow en passant. So let's go b3. Now when I play a3, b4, there will be no en passant. And also my bishop may be useful on b2. You never know. Of course, knight h5 is troubling, but it doesn't work because of knight e5. So my opponent wants to get a knight into... Oh wait, am I hanging stuff now? I am. CD, wait a minute. CD, if CD... then simply knight e4, knight c4, and if knight e4, then queen takes queen. Ooh, my queen is hanging. Wait a minute, so on cd I would have to play ed. But then again, on cd I could go ed, and on e4 I have knight e5. Okay, I'm not too worried about that. So bishop b2 or rook d1 are my candidates. If cd, I have to take ed. Otherwise, my e-pawn hangs, or I hang a pawn nevertheless. So let's just double check. cd, cd, knight c4. And yeah, my queen is hanging, so I don't have knight e4. Because of queen c2, and I don't have queen e4 because of knight e4. So if I go bishop b2 or rook d1, my opponent plays cd, I have to take ed. Although I could play knight d. I could play knight d because my opponent's queen is hanging. cd, knight d, ed, e4, knight e5 seems okay. I'm playing bishop b2. So on cd I either take ed or knight d. And if my opponent ever plays e4, now the e5 square and the diagonal from a1 to h8 is a bit more defended. Or there's a bit more pressure on it. Oh, excuse the arrows. Okay, so ed or knight d. Do I want to trade a pair of knights? I think I do. So let's go knight d. Now I'm expecting knight takes. Now e4 I don't think is a good idea because my bishop is now here. f5 can be played and that's scary, but I could have rook d1 followed by knight e5. I could have knight e5 straight away in some cases. My opponent's playing really well. Everything they did is thematic, and I would say black is fine. Although on f5 I may have to play f4 at some point. Wow, what's that? Queen c8? What's queen c8? Taking on h3? I don't understand queen c8. Is he really gonna sack on h3? Well, I doubt that. Maybe my opponent wants to play bishop f5. Although I don't see why they would want to play bishop f5. So I'm thinking knight d2 and on bishop f5 queen c3 followed by f4. But then on knight d2 bishop f5 queen c3 my opponent plays bishop f6. Then I probably go queen g3. Queen c8 may be a good move. Still, I'm going knight d2 because I want to challenge this knight at some point, and I either play a3 b4 or I play knight e4. And whether I go for a3, whether I can go for a3 depends on whether b3 is defended, and if my queen moves away, b3 may not be defended. So this also prevents knight e4, it prevents e4, it allows me to play bishop f3. Bishop f5 as expected. On bishop f6 I'm going queen g3. I guess to all my opponent's moves. Whether that will be good enough, we shall see. I desperately want to go a3 b4 to chase the knight away. I may also wish to trade off the light squared bishops and prevent f5 with hg4. If I can get to this structure, if this structure collapses, then I should have a great position. So a3, b4, c5, undermining everything, creating a passed d-pawn is my long-term plan. Also e4 now hangs a pawn and a bishop, so it doesn't work. pretty tense game. Something's telling me not to play f3. And I don't see a reason to play f3, but I keep looking at that move. I don't know why. Okay, king h8 doesn't do anything, I think. So, yeah, let's just prepare to chase that knight away. Let's go a3. Followed by b4. If bishop c2, I go b4. That's the point of b3 in all these structures where white has a pawn on d5 and black is trying to secure the c5 square. White has a pawn on d5 and black is trying to secure the d5 the c5 square for the knight. If you go a3 b4, then your opponent takes en passant, and if you go b3 a3 b4, there is no en passant. Therefore, you can chase the knight away. I will have to be slightly careful about knight a4. Because my bishop doesn't have any good squares. So I will not play b4 until I've secured my bishop or come up with a plan to move it away somewhere safe. I am up a minute on the clock. That's reassuring. At this point, I'm usually down on time. I don't think it was a good idea by my opponent to stack these bishops on the f-file. I think my opponent should have gone for f5, a typical plan in these Indian defenses. Maybe even g6, bishop g7, f5, transposing to a favorable king's Indian. The reason I keep looking... Okay, this secures the a4 square. I see that. That's fine. So, can I go f4 now? No, because my queen hangs. Can I go rook ae1, connecting my... or bringing my rook to the center, putting pressure on e4, planning bishop f3. Yes, good plan. Rook a1 with the idea of bishop f3 at some point and knight e4. My exchange will be hanging if I give away the d3 square, so I have to be careful. For example, if I go, I don't know, bishop f3, then knight d3 is an option, bishop d3 is an option. But it feels safer to have a rook on e1. Okay, my opponent wants to go bishop h4 or bishop g5. I can see that. I still think it's time to chase the knight away. So b4, ab, knight a4, bishop a1, b4, knight a4, bishop a1, b4, bishop h4, queen c3, knight a4. Okay. So on bishop h4, I'd have to go queen h2. b4, bishop h4, queen h2. Okay, that seems reasonable. Let's go b4. Not queen c3 because knight a4 hangs the bishop, but queen h2. If I can get rid of this knight, I've achieved a lot. Although, if bishop h4, queen h2, then there is knight d3. Oh my god. Yeah, bishop h4 is a problem. I may have to go queen e3 to keep defending d3. Okay, this is good. This is good. My opponent did not go bishop h4 first. Now I'm relatively happy. I have managed to chase the knight away from c5. And I'm getting ready to play c5. Now I want to go bishop f3. But there is bishop d3. So I may have to go bishop g4 so that I keep controlling d3. So bishop g4 takes, h takes. Bishop g4 nothing, knight e4. Okay, okay. This is promising because I've broken through the center. Do I want to reposition my queen to b3? I think I do. So if I go queen b3, then bishop f3 does not run into any problems, and also I'm defending all the light squares. So let's go queen b3. This is also in anticipation of rook a4. So if let's say rook a4 now, yeah, how am I gonna defend? Well, all I have to defend really is the a3 square, preventing rook a3. So if rook a4, then bishop b2, and if rook a8, there is no rook a3. And I'm ready to play bishop f3 followed by knight e4. That's my dream. My dream is to get a knight to e4. That's the reason I played queen b3, so that on bishop f3 there's no bishop d3 forcing a retreat to e2 or winning an exchange. Now I'm also playing for c5. And if I get a knight to e4, then I'm definitely playing for c5. I think my opponent should have had a pawn on f5 by now. It feels very safe without f5, f4, e4 being a threat. Although on rook a4, yeah, I will have to move my bishop straight away because my opponent would be threatening rook takes on a1, rook takes, e4. My exchange is hanging and so on. Yeah, I don't think e4 now works because I can just take and go bishop g4 probably. Take on f6, I mean. Okay, this doesn't concern me that much. Now I can go knight e4. Knight e4, if bishop a4, I take on f6. Yeah, this is huge. I could already be much better here on knight e4. Yeah, let's just go knight e4. Weakness of the last move, giving away the e4 square. Now c5 is coming, and c5 will not be comfortable for my opponent. On bishop a4 I go queen e3, and I just go c5 later. Although maybe queen f3. Maybe, no, queen e3 just attacks the knight. Let's go queen e3. So now my opponent either hangs the knight or drops the bishop. Bishop g5 loses a bishop. Alright, so do we go c5 or do we take on f6? I believe we go c5. c5. Can I take on d6? Ooh. Knight d6, queen d6. Knight d6, queen d6, c5. No, queen d5. So c5, how do I defend my d5 pawn? I'll have to go bishop c4. So c5, dc, bc. Yeah, I just like that. I like that. I love that. Let's go c5. Strategic goal accomplished. I've broken through the King's Indian structure. I think this game is really instructive from a strategic perspective because I was playing for a textbook plan against this structure and accomplished it. I may still lose, but at this point I believe white has to be better because I just have a passed pawn on d5 or on d6. I have the d6 square for my knight. Everything is secure. I have bishop c4 coming up. I can take the bishop pair whenever I want. It seems huge for me. And I mean, my opponent really must take, because if they don't, I take on d6. I just take a pawn. And then I have a securely defended passed pawn on the d file. And I'm up 4 minutes on the clock. Come on, let's convert this. No messing about, no blunders. If they go rook c8 at some point after dc, bc, then I still have rook c1. I'm not sure I want to go d6 just yet. So if rook c8, I will go rook c1. I don't want to give away the c6 square unless I have to. For the moment, my opponent's bishop on a4 is kind of offside. And that feels good. So yeah, I will decide what to do. Okay, I think just rook c1 makes perfect sense. I don't need to complicate things. At some point, my opponent has to start moving the f-pawn. Without the f-pawn, there's no counterplay. This is the only source of counterplay I can see, because this is a huge advantage. These two hanging pawns on c5 and d5 are controlling most of black's minor pieces, in fact, and the knight on e4 is dominating the bishop on f6. In fact, if I take on f6, my opponent has to take with the queen, I think. I also have bishop g4 now, which is very interesting. Just releasing the pressure on c5 completely. On bishop g4, I'll be pinning the knight to the rook. Not that I want to take, because then the bishop comes to d7, but it feels nice to have the option of defending everything with a single move. Yeah, this game is going great. I think this is a very clean game so far. I'm very happy with what I've accomplished. I had a plan, I stuck to it, and it worked. And maybe this is even a winning advantage. I don't see it yet. I don't see a way to make progress without playing d6 or c6, and d6 gives away the c6 square. So I may consider bishop c4, d6, bishop d5. But still, firstly it drops my c5 pawn. Secondly, it allows bishop c6 and the trade on c6, where my opponent recaptures with the rook and is blockading the c pawn. So maybe we go back to bishop g4, or knight takes f6. After bishop g4, knight f6 seems deadly, because on knight f6 I take the exchange, on queen f6 I take the... No, I don't take the knight, because it's defended. But I could throw in c6, and on bc6, knight f6, because then queen f6 drops the knight. Okay, bishop g4 in combination with c6 and knight takes bishop on f6 could wear material. So bishop g4 setting up c6. bc6 is forced, and then knight f6, queen f6 drops the knight, knight f6 drops the exchange, gf6, I don't know. I could take on d7, queen h6. We shall see. I can also consider playing bishop g4, bishop f5, queen h5. My opponent is down to less than 2 minutes. And miraculously, I have almost 10. This has never happened before. So my opponent has no bishop moves, because bishop h4 is meaningless. The light squared bishop has no squares. Rook c7 runs into d6, winning a piece. Moving the other rook, I don't know, maybe there is rook a4. But then I have bishop g4, just pinning the knight. Sorry, rook a5, but then bishop g4. Under a minute, I mean, my opponent's gonna have to move. This is getting very scary, going into time trouble. I don't see a single move, I'm gonna be honest, but if I'm black, I'm playing g6, bishop g7, f5. I have to regain control over e4. Although g6 gives away the dark squares, and on bishop g4 it becomes scary once again. h6, that's weird. Okay, so I was thinking bishop g4. Bishop g4 setting up knight f6 should be good. Let's just play quickly and put pressure on my opponent. Relentless. This is how strong players beat me. I get into time trouble, my position is hard to play, they make sensible moves quickly. They may not be the best moves, but there's a plan underneath. Bishop g4 has a clear plan, knight takes f6. Oh, this was the idea, okay. I have to say I'm happy to see this, because queen takes seems bad, because I have c6. If queen takes, c6 just wins. So h takes, yeah, seems forced. But now c6, I take on d7, I take on e5. Let's calculate. I can also just take the pawn on e5. So bishop takes d7, bishop takes d7, queen takes e5. Is that a simpler win? Bishop d7. Bishop d7, if queen d7, then queen e5. Bishop d7, if bishop d7, then queen e5. Yeah, this seems good enough. I'm just going to cash in my advantage. I mean, it's a simple combination that wins material. I don't see a reason not to do this. It's just a pawn. Yeah, this should be a pretty clean conversion now. I mean, I have a passed pawn on the d file. I'm up a pawn. What does this do? Where do I want my bishop? I'm thinking bishop g3, but it may be more sensible to keep my options open. Yeah, let's go bishop g3. Let's not risk anything. If f5, I'm playing f4. And I may play f4 anyway. Okay. I just want to double up my stuff and play c6, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go rook c3, rook c1, c6, and queen. Yeah, I think after c6 it's all but over. Let's just double check. c6, bc takes, not yet, not yet. So f4 first. f4, g4 takes, bishop takes. Why would I do that? I don't want to do that. Okay, so let's just switch my attention to the other pawn. So rook b1. Rook b7 is the only move I see that defends, and then I go rook b6. On rook b8 I have c6. Yeah. Oh, also on rook b8 I just take the rook. Stupid. On b6 I play c6. Queening. Yeah, this is, I'm just gonna make a queen now. There was no way to save material otherwise. Okay, so I'm guessing let's defend the pawn. And make a queen. Let's make two queens. Woohoo! Yes! Yeah, this is, it's over. I'm just gonna queen. I have two connected passed pawns on c6 and d6. And of course, king e6 runs into either rook to e3 or to e1. Followed by d7. Yeah, this is resigns. Yeah. Okay, come on! Okay, let's analyze the game. Let me just increase the size of this so that you can see it. Excuse me. Okay, you should be able to see everything. Okay, so my opponent spoiled our analysis without the engine by turning on the engine here. I've learned that. Okay, so let's just see. First of all, I had 3 inaccuracies, 1 blunder. My opponent had 4 inaccuracies and 3 mistakes. What was my blunder? I wonder. Okay, master's database. c6 is fine, bishop e2 is fine, bishop e7 is fine, castles, castles. And now, isn't d5 the main move? Rook e1 is the main move? I played h3, which appears to be fine. Queen c7. d5 is a mistake. Okay, let's do it with the engine. Just make sure you guys can see. Yeah, you can see everything. So d5 is a mistake. I should have continued developing. Wow. Okay, d5, knight c5, queen c2. And this cd idea, which prevents me from taking... So this is the thing I was trying to say. If I play cd, I just lose to knight e4. Because my knight is pinned. So yeah, I saw that a bit later. Queen c2, a5, b3, good. I know that pattern. Bishop d7, bishop b2 is worse than bishop e3. cd, knight d. Wow, I'm worse. ed. Yeah, f5. f5 is like the Sveshnikov Sicilian. I was confused with queen c8. Wow, I'm worse here. I'm so much worse. Okay, king h8 does nothing. At least that I was right about. I should have gone bishop g4 straight away. I played a3. Rook a1 is good. Queen e7. b4 is good. Nice. Takes, takes. I was afraid of bishop h4. Oh, but I have a tempo with queen f3. I didn't see that. I was gonna go queen h2. And then there is a b4 and the rook comes down. And if I go queen c3, then knight a4. That's what I was afraid of. Okay, but taking is fine. Wait, bishop c1 is a mistake? Bishop a1 is a mistake? Why? Because of bishop g5. Don't I have... I don't have queen c3 anymore. Okay, queen b3. Yeah, knight e4 is just... After knight e4, I felt really good. c5 has to be correct. dc, dc. Rook c1. Yeah, it's getting very hard to play now. Okay, this is... Wait, what was my blunder? My blunder was bishop d7 winning a pawn. Come on. How is that a blunder? Bishop b2 exclam. d6 exclam. Okay, I don't think this is a blunder. It just wins a pawn. Come on. How can this be a blunder? Wait, equal? Oh, this is a blunder. Rook c3 is a blunder because he can set up a blockade. Rook d2, I have to play d6. And then bishop c6. Let me just show you that. If rook d2, d6, then bishop c6. And I'm never moving those pawns. Although the engine says b6 here. Oh yes, my rook is pinned also. That works. Oof, rook c3 is the real blunder. Yeah, now there are no tricks. c6, d6, yeah, and that was the end of the game. Okay, apart from rook c3, I'm actually very happy how I played, except for allowing that cd forcing ed or knight d. But still, a win is a win. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.